Welcome back, guys. And today we've got part three of our season preview. Once again, joined by Luke from the Rugby League Lounge. And we'll dive straight into it. We've got the seventh place team from last year, which is the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And interestingly enough, a team that hasn't been active really at all in the player market for this year, but has had a couple of small losses. They've lost Cody Nicarima for one, and they've also lost Mark Nichols as well. So a couple of little losses for the club there, and also Jackson Paulo's gone to the Roosters. But all in all, a pretty stable roster for mine, especially for a team that did finish down the ladder in terms of seventh. They're probably wanting to be more of a top four base team at all time. But let's go straight to Luke and see his thoughts on the Rabbits and what he's thinking this year for them.
Yeah, you can kind of rinse and repeat every year for the Rabbitohs, really. Like, you'll see them maybe not finish too highly up the ladder and somewhat have a disappointing season, have stretches of games where they look poor, have stretches of a game where you think, okay, these guys are contenders, and that can be injury, suspension, just all those factors involved. And for me, it's probably a bit like that again. I think people are more optimistic now because it just looks more likely we're going to get that peak Latrell. But then after the weekend, like I told you off the podcast, that I didn't watch any footy over the weekend, just even the All-Star game, and that's unlike me. But I just was busy. But I did hear that Latrell didn't break any tackles for the first time in a long time, and that is a big part of his game. Obviously, he's got the silky hands, but I'm just wondering if there's something going on. Someone did mention of his shoulder as well. So there's always something there with the Rabbitohs or something there with Latrell. I put Latrell as one of the top 5 players in the game. I put him as one of the top 3 players, though, when he's on form. It's just when everything's peaking. It's just how consistent that is. And I think it might just be one of those years where it's just one of those things that either underperform regular season or they 1 or 2 games away from the final. There's a part of me that wants him to put them as a grand final smoky. I'm just not getting myself around to it. Especially where I don't think Damien Cook is probably the player he was. And also, I'm not sold on Lachlan Ilias. I think he made some good. I think he is going to be something, but it's still going to be only his second full year. So, and like you said, they haven't made too many key movements. So, there is a chance if every one of their players gets better. Just don't know if it's going to be enough to kind of break that cycle. How about yourself, Joel?
I'm sort of on the same page as you. I'm just not too sure with the Rabbits this year. Like, I think if Latrell fires, I think he could almost have a Dalian medal winning season, and that could be enough to lead the Rabbits into a top 4 charge. But my also worry is if him or Cody go down, or Cody doesn't fire, which we've seen him do quite, especially last year where the pressure was on him. If he doesn't manage that, then everything goes on to Latrell, because I don't know if Ilias is up to that standard yet to take full control of the game. I think he's still playing probably 4th fiddle when you include Cook in terms of when he gets the ball. So I sort of can see them, and for mine, when I look at their full strength team and their squad, I think they're still quite weak in terms of their backs and depth in the backs. So if they get some outside back injuries, especially early on in their longer ones, I think there's a real concern there for them to stay relevant throughout the whole year. I think they're always going to be a team you don't want to verse, and we've always seen how good especially their edge attack can be and is. But I just feel like they're a team where the fact that they finished 7th, and they wouldn't have been entirely happy with that last year, that they haven't really gone on to sign anything to help improve that moving forward, for mine, is a slight concern, because I sort of look at last year. No, I can't really think of any major injuries that happened to their side that was really like big for them or really relevant throughout the whole season, where you could say, okay, that person's coming back this year and that's sort of like a new signing. I feel like everyone was at least there for majority of the season. So I don't know. I feel like I could be missing someone now. I could have egg on my face for it, but I just sort of feel like it's going to be another year where they're around that 7 to, or probably 6 to 8 mark. And I no doubt they're a top 8 team. I just don't think they're going to get to that actual next level where they're probably hoping to get to.
Yeah. Like you said about the injury thing, and obviously Latrell's dealt with stuff, but he was also there though,
Yeah.
especially at the back end of the season. But I do think his health is the big thing. But I would be surprised if he has a fully healthy season. That's not being a Debbie Downer. That's just looking at the history, the facts, and I'll see once I see it, then I think the big plus, the big maybe what might put them in the right direction, just to finish off that thought, is Jason Demetrio. I'm not too sure about him as a coach, but what I will say in his defence, he got better as the year got on, and especially that call with Lockie dropping him. I think he was starting to find his feet as the season progressed, and I think it said a lot that we knew who the guy was going to be straight away when Wayne Bennett was departing.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot about him, even though there's a lot of things he does where I think, it looks like he tries to do too much as a rookie coach as such, or just little things. His approach sometimes rubs me the wrong way, but there's still a lot to like about what he's done so far. So if you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, his systems, his style of play, that might be where we see the Rabbitohs break out of that cycle.
Yeah, no, I can see we can. And just on that with Lachlan Ilias, for mine, I think he plays his role quite well, especially since he's dropping. I think it's hard for him to come into this team, especially because he got three big footy personalities in Latrell, Cody, and Damien Cook, where they'll always want the ball. They're very attack dominant players, and I think when the team's on the attack, they're the ones with the ball, and that's when they play their best footy. But so Lachlan has to sort of chime in there and just sort of be the sort of the general in a way and just organise the forwards and things like that. And I think he started towards the back end of last year, he really started to do that role quite well. He doesn't need to be an attacking fullback and have those stats that some of the other top line halfbacks have. He just needs to keep playing this position where he sort of just lets the other three do what they need to do. So I think I'm in for. I think it's a good year ahead for Lachlan, just to dominate in terms of his style of play for the Bunnies. But for next year, for this next team, the Sydney Roosters, for mine, I think they're going to win the comp. I'll say it to start this preview for the Roosters. I think they're the team to beat. I like everything they're doing at the moment. I like the gains, like the Brandon Smith addition, and I also like the Jake Turpin addition to come off the bench and relieve Brandon Smith. I don't think Brandon Smith's an 80-minute hooker, but I think he's one of the best 60-minute hookers. So I think to let him have that little break will do wonders for the team. And I think Turpin having that smaller role could suit him quite well, because I don't think there's any doubt he's a first-grade player, and I think he got unfairly criticised at times by the Broncos and their fans. I think they sort of wanted a scapegoat, and he proved to be that at times for the Broncos. But I like the one big thing I look up for the Roosters is that back line, and that back line is scary good. It's one of those back lines where you don't want to let them on the front foot at all in the forwards, because you know that they'll score points in the matter of a play or two. Where are you at with the Roosters, Luke?
I haven't made my grand final pick yet, but I'm leaning towards the Roosters. A lot of what you said. I also think a big thing for the Roosters, I would like them to be. We talked about the Rabbitohs, but I think the Rabbitohs are kind of a outline in terms of where you can finish on the ladder. Even the Roosters last year, they finished sixth, and a lot of people still had them as grand final contenders. But I do think we all know there hasn't been a premiership winner. I can't remember the last time, if there was or whatever. Especially in this new system, there hasn't been a team that's won the comp that hasn't finished inside the four. It is really important that they finish inside the top four. So they've got the side definitely to get there, but will they finish in the top four? And why I'm really confident they will is I think they built a lot of those they've gotten over a lot of those growing pains. They now know how that half combination works with Walker 7, Carey 6. They also I think it's a really important part. They don't get that butchered, pulled apart during Origin.
Yeah.
They've got Teddy, but you look at the two halves, Sam Walker and Carey, yeah, they're kind of on the cusp of Origin, but they're not playing.
Mm.
And then Brandon Smith is a Kiwi. You've also got Joseph Manu, who's a Kiwi. And then you think about that, who's covering the best fullback in the world? Arguably the next best fullback in the world, Joseph Manu. Not saying he is, team. Don't freak out. But the only ones that are really missing, Daniel Tupou hasn't been in the mix, is Angus Crichton and James Tedesco. Might be missing a name there, but you get the gist of it. And obviously Victor Radley is now not affected. He is big, though. His health is very important. Like, he's the reason I think it was a year that Flanagan was the halfback, and they were going, it was the year after 2019, they were going awesome, and then he got injured. Luckily, now they've got Brandon Smith to help out that mobility in the middle. But I'm really liking the Roosters. I think there's a lot of things that were negative about them last year that have been sorted. And I actually think they're going to hit the ground running a bit quicker than people think too. So, yeah, I echo everything you say. And I think Joseph Manu just knows his role now. Like, yes, he can go to be one of the best players in the comp, but he is content. He doesn't have an ego. He just does his job. Yeah, like you can probably hear me talking myself into picking them. I don't want to be as boring as I don't want to be, I shouldn't say boring and pick the same as you, but it's definitely where I'm trending at this stage.
Yeah, I think as well with the Roosters, and I think you can already see that just in last week's performance in the trial, is that I think Robson has outlined the fact that they are slow starters, and I think he wants to kick that out of him. So that way, I reckon in the last probably 2 seasons, what's let him down the most is that they've given teams too much of a head start. And I'm talking about the Panthers and probably the Storm, last year, the Cowboys, the Sharks, the Eels. They've given those teams who have started a lot better than them probably 2 to 3 win head start. And throughout the year where some injuries can come and you can lose 1 or 2, you don't want to be doing that. So I think Robinson has actually outlined that, especially early on now this year. And that's why they've named such a strong side last week. This week, obviously, most teams have done the same thing anyway. But to play that such a strong lineup last week, a lot of people were thinking, what's going on here? But if there's one coach in the game that knows what to do, especially with a group of players, it's Robinson at the Roosters. And I reckon it was a great thing to do. I think the more that team can gel early on and hit the ground running, the scarier it is for the comp, because first game for them is, I'm pretty sure, the Dolphins. So they could get away to a screamer, but you never know what will happen with the Dolphins. But you mentioned one name that I want to quickly focus on, and that's Luke Keary. We've seen, unfortunately, his injury concerns over the last probably 2 years, especially with the HIA. I believe he's missing this week's game because of a similar knock that happened during training. So there's starting to be a little bit of whispers coming around. There's some rumours going around about his future and what the Roosters do, because I think he's taking in a bit of a chunk of the cap at the moment, but they've also got some young players coming through, and I think we'll see sort of where they're at in terms of what their play is next when it comes to Luke Keary. What would you do with the Luke Keary situation at the moment? Because I think, as you said, the halves have started to work, but it just becomes once again this year where the halves keep going in and out because of these injuries, which he obviously can't help, but it impacts the team. And you don't want that unreliability to happen, especially when there's a year where a lot of pundits out there and pros and things like that and commentators are saying you're going to have a successful year.
It's a tough one. I do just think you just don't do anything. I mean, it's one of those things where I think you just got to play them, and you just got to back yourself to be good early, and then have that potential to, if they are like I believe, get someone is it about, get himself in the comfortable position and think, all right, is this the time now? Look, maybe we're going to cost ourselves a spot, but we've got a final spot in the top 4. Do we consider how we conserve these players? It's also interesting if you carry players on the bench that can cover as well, just to say they're blown out of team. So all those things, you can put bubble wrap around them, but at the end of the day, Luke Keary, when he was healthy, I had him as a top 10 player of the game. He's one of those players that really needs to take on the line. We say that about all the best halves. Probably the only halves we don't really say that about is like the Cooper Cronks of the world, where he can game manage and step back in that pocket. But those ones that take on the line, the Kieran Fawns of the world, his partner Sam Walker, yeah, and obviously, and they got injury concerns, obviously, and that's what's going to happen. I just think you've just got to play them and just see if you can build up potential strategies within the way you rotate your bench, and also just looking at that back end of the season. Yeah, it's a really tough one, but I think if you over plan, then that's also like, it's like when, if you think you're going to get injured, you're more likely to get injured. It's all that side because you're just going to contact. So I think it's a lot that comes down to how Luke Keary is mentally.
The scary thing, I think, just on the last bit here with the Roosters, and that, let's say if Keary or say Teddy do go down at some point this year and they're out for any amount of time, the scary thing for any opposition out there is that they've got probably the best replacement out there in Manu, who can fill in at fullback. And he's probably, for mine, I think there's been talk about he's trained at 5'8" as well. And that was part of his new deal with the Roosters to get in closer to the ruck when there's a chance. And I think we've just seen he's gone from strength to strength. And for mine, I think you already said it, I'd put him in probably the top 5 players in the game currently, just with how good he has been, especially that in the World Cup. He was so good for New Zealand. And I think that's a huge danger because at the moment, I think Keary has sort of not ever come back with 100% confidence, which you can't blame him for. Where if Manu replaces him and goes into that spot, Walker's already getting to that stage now where I reckon he's challenging for that Maroons number 7 spot, and he's got all the confidence in the world. And then you add Manu, a runner, and he can also ball play at 5'8". I think that's some really dangerous signs there for the Roosters, and one of the reasons why I personally think they'll go all the way this year.
Sorry to cut you off, Joel. I just thought if there's a potential that Luke Keary or Walker gets injured early and Manu is given the opportunity to go in the 6, and let's say it goes fantastic, I think they've got to make the decision to just say, all right, whoever's injured, that might be you for the year, because we can trust Manu more to be durable. I know how it's tough. But yeah, this is all what is, but it just made me think about that.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the next team is one close to your heart. The 5th place last year, the Melbourne Storm. Fair to say they were very disappointed with how their season ended last year. Not what they expected, but they did have quite a few injuries to contend with that you can sort of reason with. But I know Bellamy wouldn't have thought that. He has that no excuses mentality, which I believe probably a lot of their fans are starting to have now as well because of this sustained success that they've had. I personally like some of these signings they've got. The Elise Katoas and the Tarek Sims signing for mine is a really good one, especially to replace some of the key losses in the engine room. They also get back Cameron Welsh for mine. We talked about that earlier when long-term injured players come back. It's sort of like a new signing. That's the same thing here with Welsh. A lot of people probably forget just how good he was the year before. He was probably the best prop in the game. So it's a good addition to have come back into the team, and also the captain of the club. As a fan, you can be a bit biased here. I know you try not to be, but where are you at with your Storm this year? I think I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago and you weren't too confident.
So I want to echo everything you've said. I've come a little bit more positive lately, and I'll tell you why soon, without revealing too much about the other teams that we got to contend with. I think overall, why this is probably the one off season I felt most at ease, because I think still rightfully so, we are probably one of those teams. If we win a premiership in the season, it's not going to shock the world. I'm not saying we're the ones that should be favourites, not at all. But we're in the mix. And especially because of all the past history. And it'd be stupid to doubt us. Saying that, the edge defense last year was shocking in parts. And now we're getting rid of Kenny. We're getting rid of Felice. Even though Jesse's not on the edge, we're getting rid of a key leader, obviously our captain. Remus Smith was a big injury last year. I think he was the most underrated injury in the whole comp. And I feel really confident in saying that. I put Remus Smith in my top 10 centers heading into this year on Big Lee's page. And I got a lot of pushback. That's probably the pick I got the most pushback. It's just because I realized the impact he had. Everyone thought when he went to Storm, oh, they're just going to turn him to the winger and he's going to be playing for the Kiwis. He's actually stuck in the centres, which he was at the Doggies, and he has killed it on attack and in defence. So adding him back in key. Now, I think Tarek Sims, without all the BS that come with the Dragons and him understanding the role, him having a perspective of where he's at his career, which he showed at parts of the Dragons, but everything else wasn't helping as well in terms of the environment there. I'm more optimistic of him. I keep actually forgetting he's coming. Not going to lie. I keep forgetting he's coming. Katoa, talent. And to be fair, one system to bring him into is us or the Storm or the Roosters, like we discussed a little bit last week. So I was actually starting to forget how important our culture is and how we can get players to get to a next level. But I was just really concerned with one of our weaknesses last year and that getting even weakened even further. Yeah, that was a concern to me. But then I want to think about the attack. I think the attack can improve. And Christian Welch, he's not that typical ball playing forward, but Jeepers don't sleep on him. Like, he is really a focal point sometimes. Very subtle. And he's an awesome leader as well. So I am talking myself into the Storm. A big reason why I'm talking myself into the Storm is when we're going to take the Panthers out of this, the Sharks, the Cowboys, the Eels are 3 teams above us at the moment. Obviously, the Roosters I kind of put with us, and I expect them to take that jump. But there is a real world where those teams get worse as well. I believe. Now, I won't spoil what I actually think, but I think you can make a really good case, especially for the Sharks and Cowboys, because the year before, yes, their coach is different. Yes, their system's different. But they did miss the 8 the year before.
Yeah.
And a lot of their superstars have only just had the one good year or something. Not saying it's a second year syndrome for those teams, but there's potential. And we know that the Eels got gutted out, and we'll get to our thoughts on them soon. But I think we still when I play that comparison game, I think we're still at it. But if I compare ourselves to other years, that's where you fall into the trap of doubting the Storm. But I think in terms of the playing field, I'm coming back around on our boys, and I'm feeling a lot better. I'm actually thinking that we are one of the favourites to win it.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there as well with the Storm, and it's just that thing where you can't count them out. And for mine, I'm starting to lean more and more towards the fact that this is Bellamy's last year, and I think they want to send him out as a winner, or if not a winner, at least as the most successful they can go. And I don't think the players will sleep on that. I like to do a big prediction each video. And my one this year for this video would be Tarek Sims being back in New South Wales side. I think him and Katoa are 2 players that Bellamy would just be loving having his hands on. And I think he's just going to get them both back up to that other level we know that both players can get to and have showed in the past. And I've seen pictures of Sims this year, and I know you can't judge it on this, but he looks like an absolute monster at the moment. And I feel like he's now gone to Melbourne and he has that focus on his footy career, and that's all he cares about now. He's out of the crap that is the Dragons, because we all know that club is basically a basket case at the moment. But he can just go to Melbourne. There's no media hounding him because they're always just under the radar. He's just going to be in the training each day. And I think we're going to see the best version of Tarek Sims. So Blues call up for mine, get around it. And yeah, I think the Storm, I know it's a big loss, Pappy, and I think that's going to be an ongoing concern throughout the year.
What about that? I actually forgot. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other, I was like, oh, well, forgot about that. That is, I must say, I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is
I knew there was something. Yeah, I knew there was something I'd forgotten, and that's you
yeah,
just triggered me.
it's a concern, and it's interesting what they decide to do with this for the first 6 weeks, because we've seen last year the Munster experiment, him going back to fullback, but I don't know if he'll want to do that again this year. I think he'll want to keep the half and 5/8 together because they're so good together, and I think we'll start to see probably that the young talent. I think we've seen the last weekend, and I've got a mental blank on his name, but he was showing some really good promise, and he's a
Uh,
sort of that style of Pappy. So I think there is concern there, and I think because of the injuries coming back from, like a shattered kneecap, that is crazy, and it's going to be hard to get back 100% from that, especially confidence wise. But yeah, I like the Storm. I like to see where they're going. So on that one, the next team in Kampala getting the season preview done would be the Parramatta Eels, and fourth place last year, top four finish after their defeat to the Storm in the last regular game, and the grand finalists going down to just a supreme team in the Panthers, just that well-oiled machine once again that continues to win, even though we continue to try and write them off and say they're done, but they've been, as you mentioned earlier, they've been gutted. They've had some quality players leave the club. Immediately come to mind, Papali'i and Marnie, to name a couple, and probably a couple of their fringe first graders who were so good in terms of whenever there was injuries to fill in a gap. Talking about Neokora as such, and Kafusi, who's now gone to the Sharks. Those players are so good when there was injuries to step up and do a job. Now, there's some good young talent coming through. They've signed some decent replacements. Like I'm optimistic about the Hodgson signing, but for mine, he just isn't a Reed Marnie. I think Marnie is now up to one of the supreme hookers in the game, so you can't replace that, unfortunately. Papali'i for mine's the best second row in the game, so losing him is huge. And I know Hopgood and I know Murchie are good players who, under Brad Arthur, can probably come into another level and get up to that level with the Eels, but you got to be realistic as well. I'm obviously a Para fan, and there is a slight concern. I think I'm sort of where you were a few weeks ago with the Storm, but I think a whole heap rests on the Moses re-signing. I think if he re-signs, that gives the players that momentum sort of to go, sweet, we're all in this sort of together, let's go again. If he jumps off ship in the next couple of weeks, I think that destroys it. And I think I would not be surprised if we actually missed the 8, to be honest. That's how big I think that could be. So where are you at with the Eels?
you actually summed up everything right to the point where you said they might miss the 8, because I didn't want to admit to you. It's not where I'm leaning, but it has across my mind because we do that maths every year. I think on average 2 to 3. I think we spoke about this in another part where two to three teams do miss it from the previous year. My biggest thing now, I really want to actually go back and watch some footage because I think you do have the biggest swing factor in the whole, in terms of playing the whole comp. And I've heard so good things about him, but I have not watched him enough. And I just want to know a bit more about your thoughts on Jermaine Hopgood, because would it be crazy to say he's a signing of the year? Because from what I've heard, he is, and from what I watched from the grand final being live, it's a bit hard to actually sit back and focus in on certain players. But I do have that game recorded, so I really need to watch. He's the one player I really want to watch some footage on. If there's anyone, it's him, because I think from what I've heard, from what the Panthers have said, from all these accolades he has been given and praise, it's hard to say that about a guy that's basically a rookie. But what are your thoughts on Hopgood?
I think he could be right up there for signing of the year. And I know Penrith were not happy losing him. They did not want to lose him, but the salary cap sort of bit them on the arse, so to speak. And as a fan, I really like him being in the side, and I know he can bring something a little bit different and a bit more of that mongrel and toughness that I think this side does crave. I think on a positive, you can't go away from the fact that we've still got probably one of the strongest forward packs in the comp. And I think Paulo and Campbell Gillard for a start. They're two of the better props in the game, if not probably both in the top 5 for mine. And they lay such a good platform. And then you can add to that Hopgood, Madison when he's back from his suspension. Who knows what's happened with Nathan Brown at the moment, but even when he's on his day, he can be quite a good addition. But then you've got like Lane. Lane for mine had his best year to date last year. So adding Hopgood, and I even have a real positive thoughts about the Murchie signing as well. I'm really looking forward to him and seeing what he can do with us. And I feel like either of those two are going to be a replica of what happened with Papali'i when he first came to the club, where he was basically a no-name. No one really knew him for anything but his crazy hair. And he all of a sudden, within 2 years, was probably the best second row in the game. So I think Hopgood has that. I think Hopgood has a really, really bright future. And I'm pretty sure he's New South Welshman. So I think he's got Origin written all over him in the next couple of years for sure. So that is definitely a positive. And there's definitely, as I said, for mine, the only reason I say there could be a risk factor of missing the 8 is with the Moses decision. If Moses stays, then most of the spine stays. Dill Brown for mine is probably the best young talent in the game, and I think he continues to improve. And his running game we've seen last year just went to another level. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does this year. But I can, as I said, I can see both sides of it, and I'm just hoping as a fan, trying to be the professional away from it, but I can sort of see us around that sort of 4th to 6th, maybe 7th spot, and we should be a top 8 team. We should be a top 8 team. I think we need to hope to God Hodgson stays healthy, because we don't have much after Hodgson, and that's a big concern as well. Our hooker depth really is non-existent, I think, for now, because Mitch Rain has been around long enough, hasn't established himself as that first grade player. He was written sort of to be when he was at the Dragons, so that's a concern. But yeah, we'll see what we can do there.
Yeah, but, no, I echo what you say there. Yeah, no, I just honestly, I've just been thinking about that Hopwood so much, and I just wonder, like, if he's kind of your. And it just comes to me now, like when Johnny Bateman comes, and I know they're different players, but when Johnny Bateman came to the Raiders, he just added something a bit extra, and I just wonder, and it just was a bit unorthodox. It was a bit out of nowhere. It was unexpected. And I just wonder if, and it just brings the best out of everyone else as well. He's some guy, like I said, that I want to watch. But yeah, like I just want to echo your thoughts too on Dylan Brown. He's special, and the shakiness of the Eels may be leaving in the past of a guy like Dylan Brown there, because he's as smooth as you can get, that man, and I think his confidence really rubs off on everyone, especially his halves partner, Mitchell Moses. So yeah,
I echo that.
Feeling very similar to yourself.
Yeah. Now, I want to leave the top 3 for next week, and that way we've got something to fill in the gap between the week off. And I think that we need a little bit longer for those 3 teams, that being quite a few talking points, as you've already mentioned, with a few of them. We do it every video. So out of the 4 teams we've spoken about today, we've got South, Roosters, Storm, and Eels. Which is the team out of those 4 that could finish lowest?
Jeepers. So I've got 2 teams in mind, which is Rabbits and the Eels. I'm going to go Rabbits.
Yeah,
I'm going to go Rabbits. But when we get the finals footy, what team I'm going to be feeling better about? That might be a different answer.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'll lock in the Bunnies as well. I think there's just that little risk factor with them at the moment, especially relying on so heavily on 2 to 3 players. So, and
could the Bunnies miss the 8? Like,
I feel like they could. I know a lot of people saying Chinese New Year, the year of the rabbit, blah blah blah. But I really don't know about the Rabbits. They're another one of those teams. I think we've had that a couple of times this year so far with these predictions, where they're just another I don't know team. So I don't know. What about the team you reckon can finish the highest out of those 4?
The Roosters
Yeah.
over the Storm. Yeah. I think the Storm, that Happy injury, I keep thinking back to. And then I think that was the other day I was thinking, oh yeah, I was getting my hopes up, and then I remember that, and that was it. So I think out of all those four teams, I would say for me the Roosters in my top four. I don't actually know if I've got the other teams in the top four. I think the Storm probably have the potential to do similar to what happened last year, where they either drop out or it's kind of the inverse where they make a late run and they just miss out due to that happy factor. So at the moment, I honestly think the Roosters will be top three at this stage. I think there's them and two teams we haven't mentioned that are my top three. So yeah, without giving too much away.
I agree with you there. Once again, with the Roosters, I said it before. I think they'll win the comp, and I don't know if they'll be minor premiers. I think they might do that typical Roosters, take a little bit to get going, but I think they'll be strong enough to just keep the momentum going towards the back end of the season and be holding that trophy. Once again, guys, I say a big thank you for all the support so far for both channels. I know we're both very much appreciative of everything and taking the time to listen to our videos, watch our videos, liking all the content we're producing at the moment. Luke, enjoy second week of the trial games of the Challenge Cup or the preseason cup, whatever they've called it. There's two teams already on 15 points. So how good's that after 1 week? And yeah, enjoy your weekend, guys, and enjoy the footy.
It's a funny system, mate. Yeah, no, hopefully I can watch some games this weekend. Busy weekend for myself, but don't have many excuses this weekend. So yeah, thanks heaps, Joel, and yeah, see you guys next week.